Jaguar looked in its rearview mirror and liked what it saw. That's this week on Motoring 99.
TSN's Motoring 99 is brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them. And Midas Car Care, the way it should be.
From the four corners of the earth they come to kiss this shrine. From William Shakespeare's Merchant of Venice. Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring 99. Now I guarantee you that is the first time and most likely the last time you'll ever hear me quote from Shakespeare. But you know, it just seems fitting when you consider we're in Stratford, England, home of the great literary and dramatic genius. And you know, auto journalists are coming to England from four corners of the earth, but not to quote Shakespeare. They're here to witness the unveiling of what Jaguar considers to be its most significant vehicle in decades. It was a moment Jaguar had waited 30 years for, the world premiere of the S-type, a car directly aimed at the BMW 5 Series and Mercedes E-Class. But the car also marked a return to the company's roots.
Well, I think it's two things. I think, first of all, yes, heritage is important. You know I'm fond of saying that if you don't know where you've come from, you don't know where you are, and that means you don't know where you're going. And of course, the heritage of this vehicle is definitely lies in Jaguar's past in the Mark II and the S-type, and you can see that from just looking at the styling. But I think the other view is that it shows as well what the association with Ford is doing for us. Here we have access to a platform that we would have not had access if we'd been a separate company. We have access to world-class suppliers, so we're able to make a car that's so absolutely superb quality. And I think it's a sign that Jaguar is growing up.
The rear-wheel S-type is powered by the 4-liter V8 and a 3-liter V6 and shares a new platform with the 2000 Lincoln LS sedan.
So this is going to be a car that is far, far more affordable than today's Jaguars. It's going to be a car that really, if you're thinking, for instance, of buying a, I don't know, BMW 528 or an Audi A6, you really should wait until we've got the car in the marketplace in April next year. It's going to be a car that's going to appeal, I think, to a lot of people. Very, very different in terms of looks, very different in terms of elegance, and it is a Jaguar, and it is going to be far more affordable. That will inevitably bring different people, people who've aspired to a Jaguar for, I hope, some time, or perhaps people who've never thought of a Jaguar but then get struck by just how different this car is.
I think for us to design cars that endure in terms of their lifespan is a much more difficult activity than designing a hip, trendy car that is hot for 6 months and then distinctly cool. And we work very hard to understate the style, working with subtlety and finesse, using hopefully judgment and good taste rather than, raw creativity, which can be exciting for a while, tends to have a short lifespan.
We have a really super designed car with the classic lines that we were used to back with the old Mark II. A lot of references have been made to the Mark II, and of course it was a supercar. Now, this car that we've just seen introduced here has really surpassed all that. The new image of this car is what we needed for the British industry, and people must get to appreciate these classic lines, which lends it into such a supercar.
We tend to recognize ourselves by our face, and you recognize cars by their face, and the character of the car is often set up by its face. And the S-type has a very different face from the XJ and the XK, and that was a strategic part of the whole design process. We did not want a scaled-down XJ. We wanted a car that was fresh and bold and quite different from the XJ and the XK. And that, I hope, is the principal strength of the S-type. It is a more youthful car. It is a legitimate alternative to the other two cars, and that was very much part of the strategic mission for S-type.
The risk level with Jaguar is pretty low for two reasons. First of all, our business case for putting this car together in combination with Ford's a very sound one at relatively low volumes. And the second thing is that what Jaguar will do here is to bring the elegance that is the heart of Jaguar as its competitive advantage into a new part of the marketplace. In other words, it's not a question of making a better BMW or a better Mercedes-Benz. The marketplace is lacking a Jaguar. and that alone will make us competitive, I believe.
Customers are going to come from just about every segment of the market. We believe it will attract a younger buyer, but it will also give our current owners a second car alternative to what they're using at the moment. So I think we'll see a huge demographic market in terms of income and age span that will be attracted by this car because it has a very broad appeal.
Jaguar plans to expand its model line again in 2001 with the X400, but it doesn't plan to make the same mistakes when the company went bankrupt in the 80s.
What we learnt was that if you don't keep focused, if you don't keep doing the basics, if you don't keep checking yourself every day and being very nervous about what the competition is doing every day, you are not going to survive for very long. I've learnt that. It's a bitter, bitter lesson, and I hope to God that I never ever forget it.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for being here at the christening of the new edition, our baby, new Jaguar family. Thank you.
Jaguar S-type, is this one of Ford's better ideas? That's later on Kenzie's Corner.
Talking about bright ideas, up next we take hybrid technology for a test drive. You know, this really could be a test drive from Motoring 2000. Welcome to Prius, Toyota's all-new hybrid vehicle. Now, the level of technology in this car is really going to surprise you. The 1.5-litre inline-4 was developed specifically for Prius and uses the latest in technology. It is also the key component as it provides both motion and the power to recharge the battery. A power splitting device divides the power two ways, sending part to the driving wheels and part to a generator. The electricity developed by the generator is then directed one of two ways. It can go to the electric motor to help power the vehicle, or to the inverter, which switches the electricity from AC to DC current, again to recharge the battery. The thing that freaks me out about this technology is that when you pull up to a stop sign and come to a complete stop, total silence. The reason? We're on electric power right now, so when we go to pull away, we're electric, then the engine kicks in, and it does so in a completely seamless and transparent manner. The reason lies in the way in which the engine is restarted. Rather than firing up and then having to match the vehicle's speed, the Prius's engine is cranked over without spark or fuel. Once engine and road speed are perfectly matched, the computer sends spark and fuel, and the motor comes to life at exactly the right point in time. Redlining the engine at just 4,000 RPM ensures that it operates at the optimum. The downside is that it limits the horsepower to just 58. This, however, can be supplemented by the electric motor, which is rated at 40 horsepower for a combined total of 98 horses. In terms of performance, this equates to 0 to 100 km/h times in about 14 seconds. Hardly quick, but when you take the fuel economy into account, it's more than acceptable. The battery pack is housed behind the back seat and the head of the trunk. The two vents on the top here draw air into the battery compartment. It then exhausts on the outside of the vehicle. That's how they keep the whole lot cool. 288 volts and 100 amps maximum output. That's enough power to arc weld. It's also the battery capacity on the Prius. From a dynamic perspective, the Prius is more than up to the task of delivering decent road manners. Up front you'll find McPherson struts and a roll bar. Attaching the latter to the struts as opposed to the lower control arms improves roll resistance.
It is the rear suspension, however, that is the key to the Prius's controlled and nimble feel. The torsion beam-based design is attached to the body by way of two toe control links, which impart a degree of passive rear-wheel steering. As with other cars, Prius features rack and pinion steering. Again, it differs because rather than being boosted hydraulically, it is electrically assisted. The feel and feedback are all they should be.
You know, whenever you brake a car, you waste an awful lot of energy. Not so with the Prius, because it uses regenerative brake technology. In essence, it changes the motor to a generator which slows the car. It also recharges the battery, recouping that lost energy. In the event that the electrics cannot support the brake effort that you've put on the brake pedal, it has a conventional hydraulic system complete with anti-lock. You know, the Prius bridges the gap between where we are today and where we need to be tomorrow if we're to preserve the environment. The one thing that I do like, the electrical side is good enough to support a fuel cell vehicle. That's a long way down the road at the moment. The other thing I like about the vehicle, it's completely self-sufficient and therefore places no burden whatsoever on the hydroelectric system. Should the battery go flat, you simply jump start it. It's time to update you on our long-term Grand Vitara. Now, right from the word go, we noticed a very peculiar noise as soon as you hit highway speed, and it seemed to emanate from the middle of the dashboard. A quick look under the hood, and we found the problem. There's a plate that allows access to the wiper linkage. This thing isn't sealed. What happens when the wind blows over the top of the engine, it vibrates that plate in exactly the same manner as a clarinet reed vibrates to create the noise a clarinet makes. As you can tell, our solution is not particularly high-tech, a piece of sticky tape. On our next update, we'll take a look at the V6 engine and the mileage it's returning.
Our Midas tip of the week concerns the use of gasoline antifreeze. Gasoline by itself, of course, won't freeze, but moisture that can in various ways enter your car's fuel system will, of course, freeze and stop the fuel flow. It can also cause a lot of rust and corrosion problem on expensive parts of your car's fuel system. Now, how does that moisture enter the car's fuel system? There's various ways, of course. If you happen to be refueling the car on a day when it's driving snow or driving rain, it can enter right through the filler neck. Or as the car ages, rust on the fuel tank can cause pinholing and moisture can enter there. On this particular car, we found the problem to be a cracked grommet on the fuel fill pipe. And many of today's cars have the fuel filler pipe cutting through the wheelhouse area where it receives a lot of tire and road splash. That can cause pinholing and more water infiltration. In any case, an ounce of prevention, or in this case 150 milliliters at a time, can save you a lot of headaches. That's your Midas tip of the week.
We address everyday concerns that working women have that are automotive, travel, or safety related. And none of the other magazines really do that. And we talk to women in a language they can understand, relate to, and learn from, so that when they're going out to buy or lease, they can make an educated and well-informed purchasing decision. Actually, I do have a few questions for you, and part of it was the leasing thing. I didn't really get the full question out about the women's market. Well, I started American Woman Motor Scene magazine 10 years ago because I was an angry consumer. I was a single parent, buying my own cars, paying my own mortgage, and raising my own family, and when I bought a new car, I wasn't treated very well at a dealership. So I decided to start a magazine that would address the needs and the concerns of working women. We educate women on buying, leasing, staying safe on the road, what to do when your teen gets her or his first license, when your aging parents are driving. We address everyday concerns that working women have that are automotive, travel, or safety related. And none of the other magazines really do that. And we talk to women in a language they can understand, relate to, and learn from, so that when they're going out to buy or lease, they can make an educated and well-informed purchasing decision. Everybody has different needs when they purchase a vehicle, for whether it's their personal use, their lifestyle. For women, though, safety is always number one, and dependability, because women don't want to get stuck on a freeway or on a dark road somewhere. When a man gets stuck, it's an inconvenience. When a woman gets stuck, it can be terrorizing. Women are finally getting respect for their purchasing power, but the number one complaint that women still have to this day is how they're treated in the dealership. And automakers are certainly paying attention to that. They're trying to educate their dealerships and the people that work in them, and we're trying to educate women to arm themselves with more information to command the respect that they deserve when they walk into the dealership. And so we say, ladies, you have to take 50% of the responsibility because you need to arm yourself with information. You need to educate yourself before you go in. It's no different than buying a refrigerator or a new sewing machine or any other big item that you're going to buy for your house.
We're now in Castle Bromwich, England, about 2 hours out of London. And for the past 30 years, this has been home to Jaguar, and this is where the S-Type will be built. And joining me right now, once again on the program, is the president of Jaguar North America, Michael Dale. And Michael, obviously you hope to create some history here with the S-Type, but this place has its own history too.
Oh, it does indeed. During World War II, Castle Bromwich was a Royal Air Force field, and on it, Vickers built Spitfires. They built roughly 60% of the Spitfires that were used during World War II, and they were tested on the airfield that was right next to the buildings that we're in. The buildings that we're standing in were on the outside kept more or less the way they were when Vickers owned the place, and I'm told that you can even find marks where there are cannon shells have been fired on the building, and of course some of the original World War II camouflage is still on the roof. Well, Vickers, of course, became very proud of the Spitfire. It played a very big part in the Battle of Britain, second only to the Hurricane. And because of the aircraft's design, the beautiful elliptical wing, I think it became a symbol to the British of their fight for survival during 1940. And obviously a Spitfire pilot became somebody who was quite popular in this island. As a result, Vickers started a tradition that said anybody who'd flown a Spitfire could always come here, have a factory tour, and get a cup of coffee. And we intend to continue that tradition.
Well, you can be sure that Jaguar is hoping to create some of its own history here with the S-Type. All right, it's now time to join Bill Gardner. And we all know Bill, great guy, not a bad word to say about anybody. But hey, he's only human. Like the rest of us, every now and then he's got to let off a little steam. Well, that was the case a few years ago during Motoring's Car of the Year program. Well, as Bill Gardner likes to tell us, sooner or later, every car of the year is going to end up in here on the hoist. And speaking of Bill Gardner, we're now going to head to his garage because this week, Bill has a few things to get off his chest.
You guys can talk all you like about car of the year, but I'll tell you, these cars of the year are driven by some pretty dumb people year after year. I see the same stuff going on, the same wastage and stupidity going on day after day. Every day I stop at the coffee shop on the way in. In the summertime, there's half a dozen cars running outside to keep the air conditioners going and keep them cool. There's guys out there half an hour of idling so they can run their cellular phone, having a conversation and stay cool. In the wintertime, there's half a dozen cars outside idling to keep the heaters going. I walk around my subdivision, I see half a dozen cars in the morning sitting there running on the fast idle for 15 minutes to warm up. What's the matter with you guys? I've talked about it before. Block heaters, plug them in if you want to warm them up, put an interior car warmer in them. You don't have to leave cars running here and there. People pull up in front of my shop, they pull right in front of the door, block the door, get out of the car, leave it running. 20 minutes later, they're still jawing away talking about something. The car's still running. We walk outside and turn it off, talk for another 10 minutes. They come to the shop door. We think it's all said and done. They want to stand there with the door open for 10 minutes in February while the heat blows outside. Use your heads. These cars, it's just stupid the way some people use them. Buying oversized, overweight cars for what people need. Look at this big sled here, 19 feet of sheet metal. To lug some guy to work with his lunch pail. It's crazy. You know, thank God for rust. This junk will be off the road in a few years, and maybe the guy will buy a sensible car. Who knows? Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
In 1948, Jaguar introduced the XK120. This was a car with the performance of an exotic sports car at half the price. Well, really, it was more like a down payment because you ended up making the difference up in repairs over the first 5 years of ownership. Jaguar continued to build exotic and fast, luxurious cars, but frankly, the quality was pretty lousy. By the late 80s, the company was very nearly toast. Now, Ford bought Jaguar primarily for the brand name, and when they found out how bad the quality really was, they faced a decision. Do we just wrap the company up and use the badge as nothing more than for a tarted-up Ford Taurus? Or do we invest and try and resurrect this company? Well, they chose the latter course, to their everlasting credit. First problem, get that quality under control. A lot of smarts and a lot of money later, and now Jaguar is at least on J.D. Power's map. The second problem, new product. The first one was the XK8 Coupe and Convertible. Not exactly an E-type, but at least it gets them back into the performance car business. And now they've come up with the S-type sedan. Now, this is a critical car for Jaguar for two reasons. First of all, it gets them into a big and growing market segment where hopefully they can make some money. And secondly, it puts them back in a market segment that they really invented. The 3.4 and 3.8 Series 2 sedans of the late 50s and early 60s were really the very first sports sedans. But while Jaguar was chasing BMW and Mercedes with ever bigger, more luxurious sedans, BMW particularly was sneaking in the back door and ate their lunch with the 5 Series. Now, Jaguar's back to reclaim territory they feel is rightfully theirs. Who do we have to thank for this? Well, Jaguar for having the ability to actually build a car like this, and frankly Ford for having the money and the support to recreate and regenerate a great old tradition. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Well, along with croquet, clay pigeon shooting is a favorite sport out here in the English countryside. And as we saw earlier, Jaguar is taking dead aim at BMW and Mercedes with their new S-type. I just hope they're a better shot than I am. That's it for now. We'll see you next week for more stories about cars and the people who drive them.
The first public exhibit of the 100 cars occurred in Amsterdam. It then came from Amsterdam here to the Canadian National Exhibition, and it's going from here to Melbourne, Australia, and will travel to 21 major cities around the world before the final selection is announced in Las Vegas on December the 4th, 1999.
TSN's Motoring 99 has been brought to you by Quaker State Motor Oils, formulated for the vehicles you drive and the way you drive them, and Midas Car Care, the way it should be.